Okay, welcome people. It is Saturday, March 2nd, and I wanted to take today, while we're in Paris, to ask the party to come on in and talk about the state of the world. I know they love to talk about conflict resolution and how to do it and inspire us to become the change. I would like myself to ask Einstein and the party to talk to us about the state of the world right now and what's going on, what is appearing to go on, and what might really be going on, those kinds of things. And anything that we can learn about how to keep ourselves moving forward to this evolutionary goal that we have of becoming the change. I think there is so much momentum right now about all of us making this evolutionary step. I've been on, as always, several podcasts in the past few weeks with just some amazing young people still opening up, getting it, becoming the change. So if Einstein can sort of take that reality that has me so jacked up and happy and excited, and then when I look at the world and what I see and what is my concern is that so many people are still subsumed by the propaganda. And the people, in my estimation, and I'm not an expert, but I certainly am somebody who has dug beneath the propaganda to find out how much propaganda there really is. I want Einstein to talk about that. Is that how do we face this massive amount of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, lies, propaganda. So that's my hope for this channel. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video. Let's begin. So let's take some deep breaths. Really feel that air flowing into your lungs. Turn your focus inward. And be aware of this non-physical world around us. There is so much information in the energy around us. Information that forms our physical world. Information that is carried on air and light and sound that allow us to have this human experience. And we will command that only the most divine light shine down upon you at this time, and the greatest good be present here. Welcome to the circle today. We are very excited to be here with you, to present with you this dissertation. And we are pleased to say that Barbara being in Paris is reminiscent for us, as through the years of Einstein's actual physical life, he was able to come to Paris on so many occasions to be an emissary for peace, to try to bring the world together after what was going to be the war that ended all wars. And today we want to take you back into some memories of that historical time and share with you how that world came back together and then was pulled apart again by the Second World War. And what happened at the end of that war that has brought you here to the Third World War. And back in the day when the First World War was raging. You have to understand that the weapons at the time seemed so advanced, because when you introduced the airplane, there was such a huge leap in evolution on so many levels, but particularly the evolution of war. And you understand that during that time of World War I, one of the most advanced weapons that was used to wage war was when they would fly their airplanes over the battlefield and drop bricks out of the plane. Today in 2024, that seems like such a simple, ineffective way of waging war. And yet back then, the sight of so many airplanes was as foreign to people as you might be if you saw a bunch of UFOs in the sky. It was so advanced and so unbelievably science fiction-like that people couldn't wrap their minds around it, even though it was just throwing a brick out of the side of the airplane. The end of that war brought such an incredible defeat to the human souls at the time, because no one could have imagined the incredible amount of devastation that took place and the loss of human lives on such a massive scale for the time. And so rebuilding the soul of Europe was an all-important mission for different organizations, particularly scientists, not just Einstein, but all of the other scientists who were also devastated by the development and the use of weapons of this level. And what happened was, in the depression, in the losses, in the emotional grieving of such a huge, monstrous event, brought people deep into their emotion. And what we have always tried to teach you is that when you get deep into your emotion, you are not only accessing your power, but you are going into a condition that allows you to have access to information that you may not understand. So in other words, say someone passes away and you're very, very grieved and you're filled with this emotion. You don't often see immediately the enlightenment that death brings, the triumph, the inspiration, because you're so busy grieving. And this is what was happening, was that the general populace of particularly Europe, because this is Europe and the areas where the war was waged. It wasn't fought on US soil, so it wasn't quite the same there. But for Einstein, his passion to be able to elevate people's thinking, to be able to elevate people's emotional states, to bring the world together in peace, to unite again as humans, not as Germans or English or French, but as humans, members of the human race. That was his intention and his work that he did as an emissary of peace around the world. However, in that depressed state of the world came the ability for someone like Hitler and the immense propaganda machine that was in place to be able to begin to plant those seeds that were then going to grow into World War II. And the horrors of World War II were much greater than what happened in World War I. The Holocaust, and then, of course, the dropping of the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This horror grew exponentially. And after that, at the end of World War II, there was this consciousness that was starting to be raised after 2 world wars that war was now becoming profitable for those companies, corporations, countries, people, whomever, who were able to produce the weapons of war. There began to be this movement about war being about profits. And this movement was not overt. It was cloaked in the propaganda that was being developed and pushed upon the world. And the propaganda, which has been around for a long time, but particularly during World War I, there was a very pointed, intentional message that was created about saving democracy, which really didn't have anything to do with anything except to stir up the masses to be passionately engaged with this idea that there was this threat to democracy. And so in order to save democracy, certain things had to take place, whatever they were, whatever the government was telling you via this propaganda. And back then, in that time in World War I, there was so little information. Like today, you get so much information 24/7. You who live today cannot imagine what it was like back then to not have that information coming at you all the time. And so it was much easier to introduce, say, a newsreel in the front of a movie that could reach people and influence them one way or the other to support war. And it is true that human beings, if left to your own devices, you won't do war. You won't generally want to create war. And so you have to be lied to and emotionally manipulated so that you consent to war as an answer to either protecting yourself from the evildoers or fighting the good fight for standing up for democracy and freedom, etc. When in reality, all wars actually diminish freedoms, diminish democracy, diminish the human race, diminish the human soul. So now you've got this dual level of relating going on, to where there's a part of you that doesn't want war, but there's another part of you that is looking outside yourself to the authorities who are telling you that you need to go kill other people in order to keep yourself safe or keep democracy safe. All of this is a construct of wayward human egos Wherever the human is residing, whether it be a government official or someone in the military or someone in the press who is writing the propaganda, this is all rooted in the wayward human ego. Because if you were aligned to compassion, meaning if you were able to feel all of your feelings and move that up into your heart, and your intuition was clearly telling you the next step for the good of the whole system, the voice of compassion, impelling you to take that step to be aligned to compassion, and then getting into your intellect and your ego. And you can see this is the pivoting point. Is what is that ego going to do? Is it going to do the bidding of the intuition, which is the whole system aligning you to compassion, or is it going to take over and make those decisions for its own good, the good of the few at the expense of the many, the whole operating system? That is the rudimental point of all conflicts in the world. So stepping away from the war analogy, know that within your own life, if you are conflicted, if you are hurt, and you are obsessed in your thinking, that is the place where you can find resolution within, is to align your intellect to what your intuition is impelling you to do, because intuition is going to impel you to be the peacemaker, unless it's impelling you to defend yourself. You know, if somebody comes at you trying to hurt you, it's going to impel you not to just sit there and take it, but to defend yourself. But defending yourself under those conditions is one situation. But what propaganda does to you, it creates a false sense of threat to impel you to take that action to hurt that threat outside you as it's being described. And this is all levels. This is not just this major, massive macrocosm of war that you're facing right now. It's also everybody in your life. And you are triggered by outside forces does not mean that outside force is necessarily a threat to you. Just because you're emotionally triggered does not mean it's a threat. It means that there is something within you wanting to be heard, wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be resolved, that is showing up outside you as that sign for you to turn inward and do that inner work. But back to the war. So here was Hitler and the propaganda machine able to take advantage of this massive emotional depression that the country was going through. And the propaganda was so powerful and so directed and so consistent and persistent. And it was very, very effective in turning people against their best interest and turning people against their intuition. Because intuitively, you would never be intuitively impelled to murder people in such a way. That would not be what intuition would ever impel you to do. So many people abandon their own selves because they sought outside themselves for the answers, for the comfort, for taking down that thing that appeared to be threatening outside themselves. You know, if you just take out the Jews, we'll be better. They are the cause of all the troubles. And so after World War II, when all of the atrocities were becoming known and coming out, then the world went through the second depression and confusion about how could we have possibly allowed this insanity to happen. And if you really dissect it, you realize that governments around the world, the United States included, who were gaining your support with propaganda to go save democracy, were also at the same time funding the Nazi regime. This created a dichotomy within the structure of the United States of America. And not that this is the first time that any kind of dichotomy as such has existed, but we're focusing on this time to lead you up to modern history. And it was from there, after that, that the culture started to change. And it went from being more traditional, family-oriented culture, moving into the 50s, and this, where there was a kind of a standard and a kind of an abundance that came about. And then moving into the 60s, where everything started to change culturally and become more permissive and become more artistic and more creative, and humans started to emerge from being so controlled, letting themselves be so controlled by what they were being told to do, to rebelling and having a mind of their own and saying no to authority and questioning authority. And this whole movement was really setting up the world that you have now, where you can see how much variety, how much diversity of thought and ideas have come about from this opening up of the human capacity to create and ideate. And also during this time, there was great spiritual awakening coming forth. And it wasn't just the New Age back in the 70s and the 80s. All of that was emerging from this human soul, the collective human soul that knew that you were better than what you were creating. That some level, maybe not your intellectual thinking at that time, but something deep within the human souls were pushing forward, because this collective consciousness of evolution, being driven by compassion, the fifth fundamental force, was changing and evolving into being these humans that are evolved, that are conscious, that are intentional, and that are choosing to be aligned to intuition as a way to bring about peace on earth. Now, it might not have been described that way, but that's how we see it. That from the depths, as we said, sometimes when maybe someone passes away in your life and you're so sad and so emotional, you go into a place that you couldn't access without that event. And that's so important to get to those places deep within you where all of that energy of emotion, and to integrate it and to bring it forward. And so humanity has been evolving, and at the same time, this structural condition that we talked about, where the United States on one hand is saying this to their people, and on the other hand, they're doing something completely different that is not for the good of those people. This condition has been prevalent in the country for a long time. And now what's happening is that it's being revealed. It's being revealed how much the government does not tell you the truth. And this is not just like back in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan said the famous quote about the last thing you need to hear is the government wants to help you. You shouldn't trust that. Well, now it's to an all-time high. And now you are in World War III. You are in it now, whether anybody is labeling it that, but it is. And it is the genocide that you are seeing now. You didn't see it in World War II while it was happening. It was only after the war ended and the Allies went into and found the camps and were shocked at what they saw. Now, all of you are sitting in your homes being shocked with what you're seeing on your internets and your television sets, that there is right out in the open. This isn't the first genocide to take place since World War II, but it is the first one that is so apparent and so actively being resisted by the good people of the world who do not want to be a part of that. And people don't know what to do. There's a lot of people who are not able to embrace that truth. And so they believe the lies, that it isn't really what it is, because that is a way to cope. But for the most part, whether or not you're watching it, whether or not you believe it's going on, whether or not you think you're affected by it, what is happening to the entire planet and to every single human being on the planet right now. So much like after World War I, when people were in this depressed state and they didn't quite realize it because there wasn't a lot of psychology that was there to explain what happened, but nonetheless, it was there. And somebody who had a greater knowledge of it, say Hitler and the regime, took advantage of it. What is happening to everyone around the world is that that is how the governments are operating for the most part. Not every single government, but the main major governments that are in control, who are profiting and fueling off of this war economy state around the world, are telling you that it has to be this way to protect democracy. And they are lying to you. And you, as a collective consciousness, are being challenged to bring the truth forward through your bodies into the manifestation in the physical world. And that, we would say, is the most important piece to remember as you're moving through this time period, is that you'll feel oftentimes awfully ineffective as you watch this go on and you listen to people lying to you, and you wonder how in the world can you make a difference and stop it. We want to say to everyone, this involves the embodiment and the expression of the truth. And in order to embody and express the truth, you have to learn what the truth is and understand that that comes from within you. Knowing the truth does not come from this news source or that news source. Knowing the truth comes from knowing yourself, from knowing where you have conflict within, so that when you understand and know what that conflict is, that you don't become the war machine, that you don't take that information and project it onto other people or other situations. And so for you to first and foremost know thyself and become your own authority figure, this does not mean you don't listen. It means you listen to everything that you can. Everything. And as you start to begin to listen to everything, what the left says, what the right says, what the middle says, what your mother says, what your neighbor says, and you listen and you take it in. All you have to do is listen. You're not agreeing, you're not drawing conclusions, you're just taking in information. Then you have to know your value system. And this is one of the hardest things right now for people, because generally, most people are decent, compassionate people. Most human beings are not evil-driven. However, when you are compassionate, but your authority falls outside of you, where you look to the authority of the doctor or the president or the law enforcement officer or the teacher, anybody else, if you look at anybody else as your authority figure, it won't matter your good intentions, because you will be misplacing your power and just giving it away to these people. And that is why during the huge propaganda push in Germany during World War II, there had to be this huge intellectual overtaking of the human to say, yes, it is those people outside of me that are threatening to me. And so it is those people outside of me that have to be destroyed so that I can be safe. And the same thing is happening today, where people feel this deep angst of what's going on in the world, and they look outside themselves for the authority of some particular media outlet or some particular politician or some particular doctor, and you put your power in their hands, and they come back to say, well, here's what you should do. And it may or may not be what you should do. But if you take it in, say you're looking at your doctor and the doctor says, here's what you should do. And you take it in and you think, okay, how does this feel to me in my body? Is there a yes, a strong yes, I need to go? Or is there a absolute resistance in your body? Like, no, that feels uncomfortable. You're getting to know your intuitive sense, the voice of God within you, always telling you the next step for the good of the whole. And then you make up your own mind and you go back to that authority figure and say, you know what? That's not what I want to do. I feel like I should do this. And if that authority figure tells you you're wrong, then you need to reconsider what power you're giving to that authority figure. Now, politically right now, what's happening is that people have been so subsumed by the propaganda of the past decades, but particularly 4 or 5 years, where it's been very, very intentionally targeting humans and their psyche, is that you get caught up in the external authority figure and they tell you, you have to be afraid of those people. And if you are not seeking critical thinking and you're not seeking the truth through bringing information into your body and weighing it against your value system, then you're going to go right at it. It's going to be easy to go right at that thing outside yourself, like say a different political figure, like that's the evil one that we need to destroy. Then what happens is you must absolutely take a review of your values to see the bottom line of what your values are. Are you someone who strives to be honest? Are you someone who thinks that you can be dishonest as long as it's benefiting you? Those things are going to be their own reward or demise. If you think you have to be dishonest and that's how you operate, then you're going to create energetically a weakened infrastructure of self, and you're going to create conflicts around you. And you might at some time have a short-term gain where your lies pay off for a minute, but ultimately they're going to cause the disintegration of the strength and solidity within you of your own value system. So you have to be responsible for your values. And what we're saying right now, it's a simple method that you yourself can use to see if you are being subsumed by this incredible amount of propaganda that's being absolutely directed at you. And that is, if you think that this person who did such and such an act should be punished or should be held accountable, but this person over here who did exactly the same thing, you give a pass to. That is perhaps the most powerful way for you to learn about your own self. And we can tell you, other people can tell you, other people can say, well, wait a minute, you want that person to be punished, but you don't care that this person isn't punished? And when it comes from outside yourself, confronting you outside yourself, you have a tendency to get defensive and strengthen up your position. But when you yourself are seeking to better yourself, to strengthen yourself, to become a person of more integrity, because that's the only thing that you can do right now, and you find this in yourself, now you can begin to make those changes for yourself. And that is the most powerful and the most rudimental way to change. Whether you're talking about changing for world peace, or you're talking about to change to make your life better, talking about change to make your family's life better, this is the way to do it, is to begin with nurturing that witness of self that you call upon every single morning when you wake up, after you say your beautiful prayer of gratitude. Thank you for another day of the most amazing life. I fully intend to make this the most magical, powerful, loving, fill in the blank day that I can. I'm going to set about and get to know myself. I'm going to look instead at myself instead of outside myself. And then do it. Develop that consciousness. Watch yourself all day. Sometimes you can't. You're engaged with people. You have to be working with people and interacting, but so much time in the day you don't have to be. And instead you're caught up with tomorrow or yesterday or whatever in your head. You're not in present moment. So start to really train yourself, because this is what it is, that you're training yourself to be that observant of yourself and to know yourself. Get to know what you're thinking. Get to know what you're intuiting. Get to know what you're feeling. Get to see how you operate. Watch the decisions that you make. This is the pathway to this personal empowerment that's going to align you to compassion, that's going to bring a unified field within you that then will be able to shine forth in the lens of the physical world and manifest that peace, that integration, and that compassion in the world around you. And you're going to start to have different relationships with people as well as you do this. Your relationships are going to change, and you're going to fall away from the people who had been reflective of your inner angst or your inner dissection. And you're going to pull to you more truth, more integrated people. And instead of finding the people who are afraid, who want to look outside themselves and punish this person and getting in that group, you're going to find the people who want to be the change, who want to be the compassion, who are, instead of blaming and trying to destroy, you're going to look for creative solutions and generosity, giving, patience, understanding, because you're going to find those things for yourself. And that's the whole point of what we're talking about, is that in this world today, where you are in World War III, you have been given this opportunity to be the change in such a huge way that we do not want to underestimate the importance of this work you're doing on yourself. You might think like you're just one person and what does this matter? But it's not true. It matters greatly. Every ounce of energy that you have that you can transform and evolve into being aligned to compassion, the greater you can exert a power on the world that you have. And it doesn't matter if you only have a circle of 5 friends or 10 friends. Those 10 friends have a circle of 10 friends of 10 friends. You can make a difference by changing yourself in this way and then being that model for people, not going at people and telling them what they have to do, but being that model. And the other thing is that speaking the truth in times like these can be very dangerous. You can trigger people who don't think this way, who think that the person that triggers them is their enemy. So you have that risk that you run. But we say every time that you speak your truth, that you stand in your truth, and that you challenge the rhetoric and the propaganda that's meant to keep people from their empowerment, you add to this incredible force that is emerging from the planet right now, from the hearts of humans who are compassion, who will not stand for the division that's going on, and who start with themselves to bring that unity to themselves and then bring that to the world. That's what's going on right now. And we understand that it's a horror. It is a horror to watch genocide. And we understand that you feel totally incompetent to do anything about it. But we just want to continue to inspire you and to remind you and to urge you to work on yourself in this way and know that world peace cannot be had unless you start with yourself, unless each human starts with themselves. We know it seems like a lot of work in this big world of billions of people, but that's the good news, is that because there are so many people thrown into their compassion and into their grieving, like after World War I, only this time, there is the information about how to unify. There is the information about how to process that. There is the information about how to become compassion and how to become the change, so that when you're in those dark places and you're accessing that very deep power, that you can channel it now into this alignment to compassion and make a difference that we can't even describe how important it is to do this. So you're going to see moving ahead this year that the truth is coming out, and the truth is what inspires you, and the truth comes from within you. And if you can become this change and start to take in information, start to examine your values, start to look at yourself and see how you yourself can change yourself, this is where the world is transforming. And we are so honored to be a part of this voice and a part of this information. Because as you see through the world, as you move ahead, you're going to see the truth rising and the truth being recognized. So the more that you can do that, the more power the truth has to play out in all kinds of different situations. And so take heart with that and know that in the end, it is the love that you connect with that changes your life within first, and then changes the world around you. And if we can inspire you and enlighten you, then we will have done our job. And watch ahead as you see a lot of the mythology dispelled, and watch yourself as you see the propaganda you've been laboring under, and that you break it and you find the truth, and then you see that propaganda, it has no power over you. In fact, it comes and your body immediately rejects it. And because you're aligned to compassion and your intellect understands a different way of living than blaming people outside you, that it's just part of this mechanism of aligning to compassion, then you become the truth, and you become the inspiration, and you become the power. And that's what's happening. And it's very, very exciting for us. But yes, there are some challenging world situations ahead. And if we would talk just about the United States for a minute, we would say that as you move forward, make sure that your self-monitoring is in place, because the powers that be are driving you to fight amongst yourselves. And we understand for some of you, it's very, very difficult to let go of some of these ideas that the other person is the one that's a threat to you. But that is where you must begin, is with yourself. And the more that you change yourself, the more that you find unification within yourself, the more that you find the truth within yourself, the more that you go out in the world and face the people who you thought were the ones who were your enemies, or the ones who were doing the bad stuff, just regular humans, the more you're able to facilitate a change of unifying. So you're not driving people apart. And it doesn't work always. Every single human that you face isn't going to suddenly see what you're doing and fall in line with the truth. But you're going to have to be ready to lose some friends, lose some people who may not believe in the truth, that still want to look outside themselves and are sure that that person is the enemy. Then you have to stay in the truth and know that is not so, and not let yourself get caught up in the us versus them. And challenge yourself to be the peacemaker. Where can you go to make peace with people who not only may not believe what you believe, but also are projecting onto you that you're the enemy? So these are the challenges that you are faced with. While they're not necessarily easy, it is an incredible time for humanity to be able to come together and rise above and usher in the beginning of this brand new earth, where people are living aligned to compassion and have ended the need for war. We're going to close the channel this time to say that these are unprecedented times. The world has never been here before, and yet That's the good news. So keep connected to the compassion. Keep connected to the love. Keep connected to the earth and the water and the animals. Keep connected to each other. And then you will only need to watch and be amazed. Namaste.